Well, the Panama Papers suggested that Zelensky, like a lot of Ukrainian politicians, has some interesting business dealings.
Well,
and that he rejected the Minsk agreement. And there was a peace deal on the table, and the West lobbied Zelensky not to take that peace deal. So said the former Israeli prime minister.
Because his country got invaded illegally. I mean, you know, I don't know why you're...
Well, I would say, Bill, because of ever since the fall of the Berlin Wall, there's been encroachment on former Soviet territory, that there was a NATO-inspired coup in 2014, and that there are significant profits being made. It's the same in a sense. Look, I would offer this. I'd feel a lot more comfortable about...
Whose coup in 2014?
The 2014 coup in Ukraine that was backed by US interests.
Why would we back a coup that gave Crimea to Putin? They lost Crimea in 2014, Ukraine.
The ongoing, I think, right? Bill, to say that this is a humanitarian war that has, as an inadvertent side effect, created all this opportunity for profiting for the military-industrial complex is as naive as suggesting that the pharmaceutical industry would keep good on their pledge to not profit from the pandemic. I'm not entering into the territory, like geopolitics is bloody complicated. Putin is clearly a former KGB hardcore dictator-style politics. But like, I think that when we extract the American unipolar agenda, the idea that there can be global hegemony, that America want to destabilize Russia. Like, I think if you don't include that in the conversation, that what you get is a limited conversation.
We don't want to destabilize Russia. We were hoping after the Berlin Wall fell, and then 2 years later, Russia, the Soviet Union fell. We were hoping Russia would become, one of the nations of the world that joined the family of Western democracies. There was no reason why they couldn't have democracy. They sort of gave it a go, but it was, obviously the past was so corrupted that the future was not going to be untainted either. And then we did make mistakes. I would agree with this, which you probably, I'm thinking in the direction you're going in. I don't think we should have kept rolling NATO. First of all, why NATO if there's no Soviet Union?
Yeah.
Like, I'm not saying we should have necessarily disbanded NATO, but instead of getting more, strong NATO, more countries, it should have been like, okay, we're saying that the Cold War is over, so why do we need an organization that's against you?
Yeah.
That was a terrible message to send, and I think that set things off. It may have gone to shit anyway. I mean, Russia is a tough place, and the people, have been brutalized by communism, which is horrible for the soul, not to mention the pocketbook. But, yeah, go ahead.
Bill, can I give you a bunch of facts? Because then you can riff on them, because I'd love to see your take on these facts that come from our content on our show. Like our research gleaned from some great journalists, and it's mostly okay to say this kind of meta-journalism. Right. We accumulate facts. We don't use anything that's not been endorsed in mainstream media. And let me hit you up with some of this stuff, and because I genuinely want to hear your take. But let me give you the whole thing as an overview, and then you can, as Bill Maher, because let's face it, no one else can do this.
Knock yourself out.
Okay, so former Israeli Prime Minister Naftali Bennett said recently a Russia-Ukraine peace deal was blocked by Western powers. We know that Boris Johnson visited Ukraine and counseled Zelensky against taking the peace deal that was on the table. That's just one thing. Let me hit you with all this stuff. Zelensky has vowed to retake Crimea, but Russia said that's the red line that will spark nuclear war. We know that, all right? Republican Senate leader Mitch McConnell said in December 2022, the most basic reasons for continuing to help Ukraine degrade and defeat the Russian invaders are cold, hard, practical American interests. And then I'll just widen this out a little. The Pentagon spent $14 trillion after 9/11. 55% of it went to for-profit defense contractors. The average American taxpayer contributed $2,000 to the military last year. More than 900 of that went to corporate military contractors. At least 15 politicians who shape US defense policy have investments in military contractors. Military contractors split their checks more or less evenly between Democrat and Republican candidates last year. And Biden appointed a former BlackRock MD to the cabinet in particular to sort out the post-Ukrainian reconstruction.
Okay, stop.
These are good facts, Bill.
These are facts. Possibly. I don't have a fact checker here. I don't doubt any.
You're not going to need one.
Wait. But it's so far from the point. I mean, I feel like your antenna for conspiracy theories, I mean, you have a good antenna, and then sometimes it does not serve you well. Because, like, even if all this stuff is true, it's just more complicated than that. Both things can be true. It can be something that is a worthy endeavor to stop Russia from invading another country, and it also could be the case, it is the case, of course. People in the defense industry are looking to keep having reasons to make weapons and so forth.
Yes.
There are people who absolutely have a vested interest in war. Those are what your facts are saying. It doesn't mean, even if all that is true, and I would agree, there are people who have a vested interest in war. That doesn't mean, logically, it doesn't mean that every war is because of that.
I would
Wars
offer
can
this.
also be for another reason, and then these people glom onto that.
Like,
That's called the shock doctrine. When you take advantage, of a crisis, it's going on. But it also could be the case that the war is a valiant endeavor. To a point.
I'm not excluding that.
Not till they bomb Ukraine to nothing. I mean, it's a very valid question now to ask.
What I'm saying is, do you think it's a coincidence that the mainstream media only reports on one aspect of this conflict, only gives you one narrative? I am obviously not in a, look at my glittery trousers. I'm not in an a position to offer a definitive opinion on this. But what I will say is that sometimes when you talk about my antenna, right, this is what I think is like, either this war in Ukraine is motivated by a genuine and legitimate need to rightly and correctly support Ukrainian people who are under attack and suffering because of a war. Because when I've been looking at life, I notice how often humanitarianism is the motivation of the military-industrial complex. So you're always like, who can we help now? Who can we help now? And wouldn't it be great if we had a system that's like, oh, just to make sure that there is no other motivation, there can be no profit extracted from this conflict.
You know,
that the aid offered will not end up in Raytheon, Lockheed Martin, Northrop Grumman, BAE systems. Wouldn't that be a beautiful system? Like, so as long as that is one of the possible reasons, isn't it the most likely reason?
Well, again, now I feel
I'm
like
not saying, I'm talking about complexity.
I feel like now we're just making, like you've made your point and I've made mine, and now I feel like we're repeating ourselves. Because, like, I'm just going to say again, and it sounds like you didn't hear me, like, both things can be true. It doesn't.
No, but you said earlier,
not everything
like,
has
Putin
to be
is a monster
or.
and Zelensky is a hero. And I'm like, well, hang on, what about this shit? Because do you think, like, how long do you think Zelensky is going to get support if his interests don't converge with the MIC?
Throwing your hands together like, oh, on the one hand, Putin is a murderer who pushes people out of windows and starts wars and all these crimes against humanity. And this guy has some shady business dealings. He's Ukrainian. He was born with a shady business dealing. I mean, that's what the country was known for before this. Hey, thanks for watching the clip. Hit the subscribe button now so you never miss out on our Club Random content that's posted daily.